Good day. This is Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett. In the last few weeks, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, has made announcements regarding obligations of funding for very large rebuilding projects in the Virgin Islands. These projects, such as the replacement of the Alexander Henderson Elementary School at over $74 million and the rebuild of the Juan F Luis Hospital at $834 million, are the culmination of tremendous work to obligate money that was appropriated by Congress in 2018. I want to thank the governor and his team at the Office of Disaster Recovery for working hard with our federal partners to present the necessary case to ensure that the awards incorporated all the needs of the community along with the true damage from the storm. The level of funding that we are receiving for rebuilding our critical infrastructure is unprecedented. That level of funding is a result of a provision in the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2018, which fundamentally changed funding to rebuild the Virgin Islands after the 2017 storms. Normally, after a disaster declaration in the United States, areas may be eligible to rebuild critical infrastructure like schools, hospitals, utilities, water and sewer systems, and communication infrastructure through a law called the Stafford Act. That law states that funding may be granted to repair or rebuild those types of infrastructure to the state they were in at the time of the storm. After the 2017 storms in the Virgin Islands, over 100 members of Congress came to our home at our invitation and saw the level of damage due to the hurricanes and from lack of funding for upkeep prior to the storms. I and my team worked diligently to change provisions of the Stafford Act. My office made the convincing argument that the level of disaster in the Virgin Islands was exacerbated by the lack of federal funding investment in our critical infrastructure prior to the storms, which made the effect of the hurricanes more profound. Members of Congress, in a bipartisan manner, voted to change provisions in the Stafford Act law for the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico and allowed funding to be set aside to rebuild not as things were at the time of the storm, but how structures should be. That change in law is what moved the funding in January 2022 for the rebuild of Arthur Richards School to $148 million, $61 million more than would have been under the prior standard, or the change in law resulted in the agreement to replace the Juan F Luis Hospital from a 232,000 square foot hospital to almost double that, to a 426,000 square foot facility that will incorporate current building codes and standards. I am grateful that sometimes Washington works, and the changes in law I was able to obtain have allowed FEMA, for the duration of the recovery from Hurricanes Irma and Maria in the Virgin Islands, to obligate funding to rebuild critical infrastructure like our sewer system, hospitals, schools, and electric system, notwithstanding the conditions of the pre-disaster incorporated resilient design and features up to the latest industry building standards, and notwithstanding pre-disaster conditions in the Virgin Islands, the standard that normally applies. In the coming months, more project funding will be announced, and more construction of our rebuild will commence. Know that those projects are, of course, the result of the diligence of our local officials and hardworking Virgin Islanders. It is also the result of Washington righting a wrong and making an investment in our future. This was paid for with official funds from the office of Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett.